Hi everyone, my name is Leah Kopke and I'm a 3D motion design freelancer. I also have a podcast where each week I cover another 3D modeling tool for Cinema 4D. Hi everyone, welcome. Last episode we finished 3D modeling our Wacom pen. We've gone over a lot of 3D modeling tools so far in the series, so I challenged you to try 3D modeling your own Wacom pen base so that you get some practice using the lathe tool and such. And today we're going to go over how to use the clone tool. And this is different from the MoGraph cloner. This is actually the clone tool for mesh modeling, and it's under the mesh menu. We're going to use the cloner in order to clone these pen tips here that you can see come in the base. Hopefully you can see that okay. Those right there. This is the top of the base. This is the bottom of the base. I've gone ahead and 3D modeled these two parts myself, as you can see on my screen here. And we're going to go over how to clone these. The nice thing about using the mesh clone tool is that it actually keeps all of your clones within one mesh, one object. The MoGraph cloner is great for if you'd like to animate your clones, but if you're just cloning something for a 3D model that you don't necessarily need to add some interesting animation to the individual clones, you can actually save your computer some work doing calculations by just having all those clones in one mesh. And that's where the clone mesh tool comes in handy. It is within the mesh tools menu, and I'll go through it here. This is the project that I have made using the tools we've talked about and covered so far within this series. So you can definitely create this yourself. You have all the skills needed to do it. And let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what we've done here. I'll turn off the IPR. And I'll come out of our camera. You can see that I have 3D modeled this base using the lathe tool, and then I made that editable. And I've done that for the top part and the bottom part. So if I solo this, you can see what I'm talking about. I used the fit circle tool in order to add in these circles here and to make sure that they're nice, neat, and organized, and made using primarily quads. I also used the bevel tool, which we've covered, to bevel these edges so we get some nice reflections from them. I used the extrude tool in order to create these details along here for this to twist together, because it has those ridges so that the top and bottom part of the base can twist together like that. We have also used the bevel tool to create this bottom part here. So these are all tools that we've covered that I used to create this. And let's unsolo this and solo the top. This one was actually simpler because this was made completely using the lathe tool. I didn't really need to use any other tools than the lathe tool to create the main form. And then I could add in bevels along this edge here so that when these two sit nice together, we get that nice detail there where we can see the part lines of how this goes together. I had created these cutouts here actually using a circle, and we went over how to use the line cut tool, previously called the knife cut tool. And so I used the circle in order to cut that shape out of our base. It may be easier for you to see if I just select the base and the circle and then solo these. So here you can see that this circle is following the curvature of the base. And that's how I made those shapes there. I'm going to hide my construction geo because you can see my other previous models while creating this in there. I like to hide that, but I keep my old models so that I can go back to any step in the process of 3D modeling in case if I change my mind on how I wanted to use things partway, I can go back. We went over that a little bit. So this is just a quick overview of what we've made. We created that button there. And one other thing that I did was after I create the cut with that circle, I deleted the part that I didn't need and I used stitch and sew. You could actually use stitch and sew, or you could use the close polygon hole tool that we went over in order to close this up. So there's multiple ways you can go about doing it. And that's how a lot of 3D modeling is. If you did a different process, that's okay, as long as if you get a final product that you're happy with pretty nice topology, you can 3D model this 10 different ways probably. But that's how I went about it, just to give you a quick overview. But let's jump into how the clone tool actually works and where you find this tool. So if you go into your mesh menu and you go down to clone, you can see that we have this option here called clone. So let's go ahead and actually let's focus on this part here. So I just want to select this and I also this may be it. So we have this here and we have our base. So the important thing to know about the mesh cloner and the mesh menu, and I keep saying mesh cloner because there's two tools called the cloner tool. You can see we have the cloner here, but this is a different kind of cloner. So this cloner today is a little bit different, but let's go ahead and talk about how this works. The cloner tool will always rotate along the axis. So if you want the axis to be different, you might need to enable axis and move it. In this case, I actually want the pen tip to be in one of these holes and I want it to clone around the axis in a circular formation. So what I actually need to do is go into polygon mode, just select all the polygons for this here, and I'm going to move it into position. I'll actually turn off my snaps because they're throwing this off a little bit, and I just want to center that within this hole here for our pen. And you'll see that if I click on enable axis, that the axis is still actually in the center of here. So this will be cloned around that center. What I need to do now is turn this off, turn off enable axis with L, or you can click that there. I want to select my mesh here and we're going to clone it. So let's go over to mesh and find our clone. You can see that our clone doesn't actually come with any hotkeys. So I find it helpful to actually add this to my UI if I'm going to use it a lot. But you'll also see that it's off here to the side that you can use when in polygon mode. It shows up. So this area over here, the tools change depending on what mode you're in. In polygon mode, you can also see the cloner listed here. So we can also access this tool in here, or you could add it to your UI as we've shown how to do in the past. You can choose the number of clones you would like. We have 10 holes, so I would like 10 clones. You can adjust the offset, and I'll show a little bit of how that works and how this option holes works and scales work. You can choose what axis you are cloning this about. We want to clone this around the Y axis, not the X axis, so we'll have Y selected. And we want this to go from 0 degrees all the way up to 360 degrees. So it's going all the way around 360 degrees around the Y-axis here. That's what we want. So we can go ahead and hit apply. And you'll see this is perfectly cloned all the way around, which is what we want. We can adjust. Now these other settings are fun to go through. So you can adjust your offset, and you can see that that adjusts the offset per clone. So if I do 57 millimeters, it'll apply that to this clone, and then this clone will, it makes a nice staircase almost looking formation. And actually this tool is great for 3D modeling staircases. If you get into 3D modeling things that are more architectural, this is a great tool for you. So you can use the offset here. You can use this option called holes, and this will remove some of your clones. So if I choose 50%, it will remove approximately 50% of the clones. But that's what that does. You can adjust the scale here. So when I click on this, you can see that it is scaling down as we clone this. So it's actually creating that seashell kind of shape that you see. I think it's called the Fibonacci curve or number. So this is going all the way around in that circular shape. It starts off at a full scale here and then scales down to 16% by the end. So that's what you're determining here. Something else that you might notice as we're adjusting these is that this had cloned it, but it never deleted the original. So we actually have two in this one place. And you can actually see that more when I reduce the scale. You can see that. There. You have rotation. We went over that a little bit, but just since we have these cloned now, maybe you can visualize it a little bit better if I show what this is now instead of just explaining it. If you decrease the rotation, you can see that now it's just cloning these up to 78 degrees and not all the way around the circle. I'll change this back to 360. You can add some variance with the movement in the X. In the X direction, so that's the X direction. I'll set that back to 0. You can randomize this in the Y direction. You can randomize this in the Z. So that's what that does. It adds some variation. You can do the same thing with scale in the X, scale in the Y, scale in the Z. If you want to add some variation, you can. I'll go ahead and hit apply, and I'll adjust our scale variation again back to 100%. So that it looks as it did before. We can also adjust our rotation variation here. So you can rotate this in the X, the Y, and the Z. So you have those options as well for some extra variation. So what the uniform scale allows you to do is to keep the same ratio of scale in the X, Y, and Z applied across all of your objects that you are cloning. That pretty much wraps up all the settings we needed to cover for the cloner tool today. I hope you enjoyed 3D modeling with me. I'd love to see what you created on Instagram or on LinkedIn. You can tag me in your project so I'll get to see it. And if you'd like to be notified when the next episode comes out, please hit like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you next week here on Ambient 3D Animations.